Hi everyone, I'm Dan from JazzComposersPresent.com, an online space where composers, musicians, and listeners come together to celebrate the music we love. I'm joined today by Sherisse Rogers, award-winning jazz composer and arranger and professor of jazz composition at Manhattan School of Music. Sherisse is here to show us how to use sus voicings to create softened dissonance.
Hi. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I just want to get right to the point. So basically, every composer has like little tricks and devices and things that they tend to use, maybe as part of their vocabulary, as part of their lexicon, as part of their things that they kind of go back to. I am an electric bass player, if you don't know, but I've been playing piano since I was a small child, but I don't have a whole lot of facility. I can play what they call composer's piano. I can plunk out some chords and stuff like that and comp a little bit. So my hands tend to go to the same places. So I tend to keep things simple. And I realized maybe over 15 years ago that like a lot of my tunes like had a lot of the same types of chords. And I realized I used a lot of sus2 and their inverse stacked fourth voicings in my chords. And I found, and then, so I'm sure someone a lot more learned and smarter than me could explain the reason for this. I'm sure it's something with the overtone series and how it rings. But I found that stacked sus2 voicings, so like let's say G, A, and D, or its inverse A, D, and G, which is the stacked fourths. When I can basically put any note in the bass, and it doesn't sound as dissonant as it could, as something like even with minor ninths and things like that in there, it doesn't sound as dissonant as it could. And I suspect it's something because of how the overtone series works and how it's ringing. Like the open fourths maybe allow for something to ring through that I'm picking up on. Now I'm going to play for you some examples, but this is all subjective. To me, I listen to a lot of dissonant music. I listen to a lot of 21st century classical music and study with Dave Liebman and all that. So like my ears tend to like prefer dissonance. So you may totally disagree with me that these dissonances are soft, but I want to play for you this first example of basically it's just going to be a sus2 voicing or stacked fourth voicing, and I'm going to be moving the bass up in half steps, and you can take a listen for yourself and see if there's a moment where it gets too dissonant and it gets ugly to your ears, or if it sounds overall pleasant. So we can go ahead and pull up the first example. Basically, this is just repeating what I was saying. So maybe that very last chord that you heard was a little bit ugly, a little bit dissonant, because there was an F, a B flat, and an E flat in my right hand, and there was an E in the bass. So that was probably the ugliest one. But to me, it still didn't sound as ugly as it possibly could as some of the other types of chords that I've heard, like more poly chords. So I've written a lot of different songs that use these types of voicings, and I like experimenting with fourths and sus2 voicings in my right hand and moving the bass all over. Especially as a bass player, I hear different bass notes and sing which kind of different chords I can create. So the next example that I want to show for you is just a few bars of a song that I wrote that the very first chord should sound uglier than it actually is because there's a minor ninth. And you'll see, you can pull up the second example. So you'll see that first chord, they had a B flat in the bass, and then the very first note in your right hand was a B natural. So you have a minor ninth, and every arranging book is going to tell you that you shouldn't use minor ninths, even though everyone from Gil Evans to our great masters does make use of minor ninths. But to me, that very first chord, because of the voice leading and because of the amount of common tones between the first and second chord, it allows for a smoother voice leading. So that's also a trick that you can use. It's like if you're going to kind of do dissonant things with your bass, make sure that you have good common tones. Even if you're only moving 1 or 2 notes, the dissonance doesn't register as much. So the last thing that I want to play for you is me using this technique on my song called For One's Lost from my record that got 4.5 out of 5 in Downbeat, called Sleight of Hand. And the song, which I actually won the Thelonious Monk competition for, is called For One's Lost. It features Donnie McCaslin as a soloist, and he's soloing over a vamp that's an A sus 4 chord over B and a G sus chord, sus 4 chord over A. And he's basically, every time it comes in, every 2 bars, I add a different note on top of the stacked fourths. And by the end, it sounds quite ugly because it was intended to display an emotion of anger. It was about me losing loved ones in my family. But still, to me, it doesn't sound as ugly as it possibly could if I wasn't using fourths. So you can go ahead and pull up the last example. So that was an excerpt at the end of the Donnie McCaslin solo of For One's Loss. If I could give you one tip, I would highly recommend you explore these techniques on your own. Come up with a voicing in your right hand. You don't have to be a great piano player to do this. It's basically just creating a sus2 voicing. So like example, G, A, D. Keep that in your right hand, and then put any note in the bass and move it up a half step and see what types of sounds you can come at. And then take that same voicing and expand to stack fourths, so A, D, G, and then do the same thing with the bass and experiment with adding different notes, especially notes that you don't think would work, like flat nines or major sevenths or things like that. Try to explore those sounds and see if you can create some softened dissonances for yourself, because you may find that even though on paper it looks like it's supposed to be very dissonant, to your ear it may actually sound pleasant like it does to me. So want to thank Daniel for having me again, and I hope to see you all soon. Thank you.
Thanks for watching today's mini lesson. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Drop any questions, comments, or suggestions for future videos down below. To watch our full-length events and participate in live Q&As with our presenting artists, head to jazzcomposerspresent.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.